In an age defined by rising ideological division, the United States has seen the entrenchment of political and cultural identities tied tightly to the extremes of the Democratic and Republican parties. Once a democracy lauded for its ideological diversity and capacity for compromise, America is now a nation where moderation is under siege. Fueled by increasing social, economic, and cultural divides, both the Democratic and Republican parties have shifted to more polarized positions, with each side rallying its base by emphasizing distinct, uncompromising views. Those who seek a middle ground, often labeled as centrists or moderates, are ostracized by both parties, leaving little space for nuanced positions or compromise. This video explores the roots and consequences of this polarization, arguing that the extreme ideologies on either side of the spectrum marginalize centrists and those who advocate for balanced approaches. As each party rallies around more rigid platforms, individuals who seek a synthesis or pragmatic approach are increasingly alienated. As this phenomenon intensifies, U.S. democracy faces a risk, the potential loss of a unifying center which has historically been the bedrock of effective governance. Ultimately, this video argues that in today's political climate, occupying a middle ground is tantamount to political isolation, resulting in attacks from both sides of the ideological spectrum. The political landscape in the United States has not always been so divided. For much of the 20th century, Democrats and Republicans maintained ideological overlaps, often working together on policies that serve the greater good. A period of notable bipartisanship existed post-World War II when politicians frequently reached across the aisle on significant issues like civil rights, economic reforms, and foreign policy. Leaders from both sides, including figures like Lyndon B. Johnson and Dwight Eisenhower, often collaborated to craft comprehensive policies that reflected a blend of values and perspectives. However, the 1980s marked a turning point. With Ronald Reagan's presidency and the conservative pushback against liberal social policies, a stark division between the parties began to emerge. Meanwhile, Democratic leaders responded by emphasizing progressive reforms, widening the ideological gap. This trend continued through the 1990s as the advent of partisan media and the 24-hour news cycle amplified partisan rhetoric. By the 2000s, as the U.S. grappled with events like 9/11, the Iraq War, and the 2008 financial crisis, each party increasingly painted the other as a threat to America's values and future. This shift away from shared values toward mutual distrust has intensified to a point where ideological purity tests are commonplace, forcing even moderate voices into rigid stances that align with party orthodoxy. Media, particularly cable news and social media platforms, has played a crucial role in cementing this divide. In the recent decades, news networks such as Fox News on the right and MSNBC on the left have shaped narratives that appeal to ideological audiences, often at the expense of objectivity and balance. These media ecosystems cater to partisan views, framing issues in ways that confirm the biases of their audience while disregarding counterpoints. Social media platforms with algorithms that prioritize engaging content exacerbate this issue by creating echo chambers. Users are more likely to see content that aligns with their existing beliefs, reinforcing their views and heightening their distrust of opposing perspectives. This insular information environment has had profound consequences for moderates and centrists. Individuals who dare to voice views that deviate from the prevailing narrative within their own party are often labeled as traitors or, in social media terms, canceled. This culture of intolerance has contributed to the shrinking middle ground in American politics, where nuanced views are increasingly sidelined. Consequently, those who attempt to introduce bipartisan solutions or moderate viewpoints face a political and social backlash from both sides, leaving them with few allies and little room for influence. The polarization in American politics is most visible in specific policy debates, where both parties present starkly contrasting views on issues central to American life. On healthcare, Democrats advocate for expanding public healthcare options or even establishing universal healthcare, while Republicans argue for market-driven solutions that minimize government intervention. On immigration, Republicans have adopted stricter policies, often focusing on border security and reducing illegal immigration, whereas Democrats generally promote pathways to citizenship and more humane immigration policies. Climate change represents another dividing line. While Democrats propose sweeping legislation such as the Green New Deal to address environmental concerns and reduce carbon emissions, Republicans often downplay the urgency of the climate crisis and argue that drastic regulations would harm the economy. Gun control is equally divisive, with Democrats pushing for stricter background checks and limitations on firearms, while Republicans defend the Second Amendment, emphasizing individual rights to gun ownership. These policy positions are no longer merely about differing views on governance, but have become symbolic representations of each party's values. A Democrat who questions the Green New Deal or a Republican who advocates for stricter gun control is at risk of alienation within their own party. Moderates who attempt to advocate for a balanced approach on these issues often face hostility from both sides, as each party views compromise as a betrayal of its core values. Polarization is not solely a political phenomenon. It has deep roots in social psychology and identity formation. Humans have a natural tendency toward in-group identification, wherein they bond closely with individuals who share similar values. While viewing those with opposing beliefs as part of an outgroup, this tribalistic mindset is exploited by political parties which frequently use identity-based appeals to solidify support. Identity politics has further intensified this dynamic. For many Americans, party affiliation is not just about policies, but about who they are as people. Democrats and Republicans each promote narratives that cast the opposing side as not just wrong, but dangerous or even morally corrupt. This approach bolsters loyalty within each party, but fosters animosity between them, making centrists and moderates who espouse a blend of values feel alienated. Consequently, individuals with mixed views are often deemed outsiders, unwelcome in both camps. In this environment, taking a centrist stance is often perceived as a betrayal, as it fails to align fully with the deeply entrenched identities fostered by each party. For moderates and centrists in American politics, finding a foothold has become increasingly difficult. Figures like Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia, and former Senator Jeff Flake, a Republican from Arizona, have faced significant backlash for their attempts to adopt centrist or bipartisan stances. Manchin's opposition to certain progressive policies has earned him criticism from within his own party, while Flake's resistance to certain Republican policies led to his political isolation. For such politicians, operating in the middle means constantly balancing the expectations of party loyalty with the reality of representing diverse constituencies. Voters often view centrists as indecisive or weak, interpreting their attempts to bridge divides as evidence of a lack of conviction. As a result, centrist candidates frequently struggle to garner robust support, with activists and interest groups pouring resources into candidates who exhibit strong partisan allegiance. In the media and public perception, centrists are often seen as inconsistent or untrustworthy, making it difficult for them to build lasting political careers. This pressure to choose a side discourages the development of centrist leaders and undermines the potential for moderate, compromise-driven solutions in American governance. The marginalization of centrists and moderates has significant implications for American governance. With both parties entrenched in their ideological extremes, passing bipartisan legislation has become increasingly challenging. Issues like infrastructure reform, immigration policy, and healthcare improvements are stalled in Congress as each party refuses to yield ground on key issues. This gridlock leads to a lack of legislative progress, frustrating citizens and undermining public trust in government. Moreover, the absence of centrists prevents the formation of coalitions that can mediate disputes and create comprehensive policies. For instance, in past decades, centrists were instrumental in passing landmark legislation by finding common ground. Without moderates to serve as mediators, today's Congress struggles to enact meaningful policy, creating a cycle of political stagnation and public disillusionment. Consequently, the lack of centrism in government not only limits progress, but also fuels the perception that the political system is broken, perpetuating the polarization that created the problem in the first place. If current trends continue, American politics may face one of three possible futures. In the first scenario, polarization continues to intensify, leading to increased social and political division, and possibly even civil unrest. Alternatively, a movement for moderation may emerge with voters recognizing the need for a return to bipartisan cooperation. This movement could give rise to third-party candidates or a new centrist party, challenging the dominance of the two-party system. A third and more concerning possibility is the collapse of public confidence in democracy itself. As polarization worsens and extremism dominates, moderate voices will have less influence, leading to increasing political dysfunction. In this scenario, disenfranchised moderates may abandon the democratic process, further entrenching the extremes. If American politics loses its center, the nation risks falling into a cycle of perpetual conflict, undermining the democratic values that have historically sustained it. In today's polarized political landscape, centrists and moderates are caught in a perilous position. As Democrats and Republicans gravitate toward their respective extremes, the middle ground has become a battleground where those who refuse to conform are met with hostility. This essay has argued that the marginalization of centrism threatens not only individual politicians, but also the democratic process itself. As the potential for compromise and coalition building erodes, to preserve the strength of American democracy, it is essential to recognize the value of balanced, nuanced perspectives and to create space for moderate voices within the political sphere. If the United States is to overcome the current climate of division, it must foster an environment where ideological diversity is seen as an asset rather than a liability. Without a revitalization of the center, America risks losing the democratic ideals that have long defined it. Now, I think we lost those in 2016. I'm just being honest. But I wrote this essay before Trump won his second term. So like a month before he won the term, and I didn't think he was gonna win. But here we are. It'll be a part two. I'll see y'all next week.